Yesterday, remember square roots are positive, negative. So A and B, look at your answers. If you don't have a positive, negative, you're going to lose a half a mark, maybe a full mark later on. This one, you need this step. You can't just go from 7 times radical 225 to 105 because I have no idea how you have to show me that this turns into 15. Okay, you have to show me that work for full marks. Otherwise, we're not bad. We saw that 3 times yesterday. This is the square root of the square root, so you have to do it twice. Good job. And let's move up to the next ones. I and so forth. You can put positive, negative 50 if you want to. 50 is going to be good enough for full marks on the big ones and the decimals. Again, make sure you show me this step. And then give me 270. And this one, don't assume, because we've done all these now, don't always assume the answer is 10. Let's create a question here, and I'll give you 10 seconds to do it. I don't know, we'll call it L and a half. Go ahead and do the cubic root of 1 million for me, please. One number multiplied by itself 3 times equals 1 million. Somebody? 100. Okay, so it's not always 10 when you see a whole bunch of zeros. Usually it is. But I could also give you one of those, so don't just put 10 and not look at it. 2 zeros times 2 zeros times 2 zeros gives you 6 zeros. Right? And I don't know if we can bump this up at all. Yes, we can. Those are your final questions. That's as far as I can bump. Again, show me that this is 4 subtract 2, not just the answer is 2. I need to see how you got it. And here's some fun stuff. 169 is 13 times 13, and I don't know if it's fun, but it's interesting. I don't know if it's interesting, but it's interesting to me. 7 times 7 times 7 is 7 times 50, or 7 times 49 minus 7, so 343. And this one, you got in O, you have 3 tenths subtract 1. And remember what we said, 3 tenths subtract 10 tenths equals negative 7 tenths. So that's the hardest one that you would have to do without your calculator. This quiz you had to do without your calculator. You guys all got 10 out of 10 anyway. There's going to be no other quiz or anything that you can't use your calculator. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. We're just trying to get these numbers, like the cubic root of 27. We're trying to get those numbers in our big fat brain so we don't have to punch it in every time. Okay, and I think that helped just by doing that for a day. Cubic root of 64, maybe you know that's 4 now. Hopefully, if you don't, you can just punch it in and we'll learn the calculator keys today. Hi. Cost average over 70. Yep. No quiz marks aren't. Any quiz marks aren't going to make much of a difference. It's only 5% of your marks. Those aren't just going to move up your average. Those are probably not even going to affect your average.
If you have a really low average, then you get it.
Okay, top of page 7, page 8 is Xbox stuff. Is it page 8?
Yes.
Yep. And before we do the 4th root and 5th root on the calculator, let's do these ones. See if you can get the square roots of something I just put on the board and then it was erased. Oh, it must be on here then. Okay, I want everyone to do the square root of 6,561 for me on your calculator, and I also want cubic root of 753,571. So find your square root button and your cubic root button. We'll correct in a second. Actually, we'll give you 2 minutes. Okay, so the opposite of what I said yesterday is get your calculators out for today. We're going to do a lot of Xbox stuff. Square root is second. Here's your square root sign right there. Right where the x squared is. Why did that not go square root? On, clear, Oh, I guess I can put the red marker. Nothing. A second. Square root, there we go. And then 6561. I get 81. I should ask you what you got first. 81 times 81, who knows? No one knows. Your calculator knows. And then this one, let's go. Oh, can we do? There we go. Cubic root. Anybody know where the cubic root button is? We're going to have to just. Wish my other calculator would be working, but for some reason it isn't. I'm going to just go here, even though you can see the cubic root. So cubic root, where'd you find that on your calculator? Okay, on this calculator, if you have it, where's your cube root on your CI? No one found it? Keep looking. Or, no, not quite. Math. Okay, when in doubt, press your math button. Good job. And then what? Is it 4 or 5? Yeah, 4. 4 is the cubic root because there's a root sign. So 4, that gives you cubic root, and then you just punch in the radicand. 753, 571. What'd you guys get? 91. That sounds made up. I apologize. That's perfect. 91 times 91 times 91 equals that radicand. Okay, next, we're going to get to university. Okay, you guys are in university. You have to follow this and do it yourself. So go ahead and read the notes and do what it tells you to do for fourth root. Okay, for fourth root, what's the first number you have to press? 4. Okay, you have to press 4 and then the root. So that's what you have to know, and that's what you have to study and know for whatever comes up on the quiz or quest. So fourth root is 4 math. Oh, that doesn't work. But that, now I know. So 4 math, and then 5. When you press 5, that means the number you press before it becomes the root. So 5, that means fourth root, and then you just punch in 10,000 and equal. 10 times itself 4 times, as we know, equals 10,000. Let's do example 2a together. Fifth root. What do we press first to get fifth root? 5. So 5, then math, then 5. Turns out 5 into a fifth root. And then you just punch in 1024. What did somebody get? Yep, right? 4 times itself 5 times equals 1024. Okay, your turn. Go ahead and do example 2b. The seventh root of negative 2,187. Almost forgot to record. Seventh root. What do you press first? 7. Math. Oh, I can't do that. 7. Math. Math. 5 gives you seventh root. And then you punch in negative. Do not put subtraction sign, or it probably will say error. Okay, your negative sign is right beside the enter button. 2187. What'd you get? Negative 3? Is that what you said? Yep, negative 3. Good job. Okay, let's do C together. Let me see if I can move this over here. C is the fourth root. Nope, negative 3 times the fourth root. So, move it a little farther. Okay, so this one, first thing you have to do is press negative 3. Okay, so negative 3. There we go. Don't hold the marker. Negative 3. And now you need fourth root. You can put times if you want to. It might be a little safer. Times. And then fourth root, just put 4 math 5. So 4 math 5. And then you punch in 50,000. 625. You don't need to show your work here because it's a calculator question. And somebody, what did you get? Negative 45. You might get negative 45. Check. Okay, looks like everyone's on the right track. And if you don't have this calculator, you're gonna have to figure out how your calculator did it. Okay, and we'll try to do that together. But as long as it takes me a couple minutes to figure out, that's fine. And for fourth root, you got to press the radicand first on your calculator and then press fourth root. It just depends on your calculator. Okay, go ahead and do D on your own, please. Xbox is fun. Why do you even need an Xbox when you have a graphing calculator? Do this all night. Okay, cubic root. Cubic root is under your math menu. Math, 3 or 4? 4. And cubic root, 216 over 125 is 216 divided by 125. I get 1.2. Yup. And if that wasn't on your multiple choice, if your fractions were in your multiple choice, you would just press math, fraction, enter, and get 6 over 5.
What if you have to do it the old-fashioned way?
You get 1.2, then you have to put 12 over 10 and then reduce it. Divide by 2, divide by 2. You still can't find that, eh? That way? Okay. Did you look at the manual, or did you? No, look online for the manual of that calculator. Okay, so try that. And if you find it, it shouldn't be hard to find what to do. Okay, let's move on to the next question, which is on your own, example 3A. Go ahead and find the fifth root of 125. Okay, let's see how you did. Fifth root of 125. Oh, I'm learning. Put the marker down, and then 5 math 5 is fifth root. 125. And this question tests you on whether you know how to read or not. Because you have to do what it says. It says evaluate the nearest 100th, which is 2 decimal places. If you don't know that, write down 2 decimal places. So this is either a 2 or a 3. What is the answer? 2.62 or 2.63? 2.6, and then there's a 6, so 3 is properly rounded. If you don't do that, you might get half your marks, because at least I can see you press the right calculator keys, but you lose half your marks for sure. Remember, rounding is extremely important in trigonometry, which is going to be your midterm and your exam. Midterm is after this test, and so make sure you know how to round properly and do it perfectly. Go ahead and do the next question. Round perfectly, please. The sixth root of decimal 5. That one confused even me. What number times itself 6 times equals decimal 5, or 1/2? That hurts my brain when I think of it that way, but your calculator will do it in 5.9 seconds. Yes, that works. Sixth root, press 6 first. So 6, math 5, we should be getting used to that by now. Decimal 5, would you get to the nearest 100, somebody? Yep. 0.89. Agreed. Goes decimal 89. Not much there. If the 0 was a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then it would be decimal 90. You would have to round that up too. But remember, 90. If it asks for 2 decimal places, you need 2 decimals, even if the last one is a 0. Irrelevant. This one is just decimal 89. Okay, you're going to university. Hey, they're going to teach you one thing and they ask you to read 2 things on your own. So go ahead, the University of Holy Trinity Academy Fighting Knights. Read that and do that, please. Okay, I was going to tell you a story about stop sign guy, but I think I'll tell you a story about horses since it's Western Day. And I'm in a cowboy hat. And the only other time I'm in a cowboy hat is at the Calgary Flames poker charity tournament. I help out and they raise money, actually I think they're close to $1 million now, or over $1 million for charity. It's a fun event. But let's talk about me and horses and why I'm not a professional cowboy. When I was, I'm not sure, 7 or 8, I was at Guido's farm and we had one horse. His name was Roy. And loved him, but you can imagine, he's 6 years old, how big a horse is, even when you're an adult. Horses are huge. But I wanted to feed him. So I think we had an apple. I'm not sure what we had to feed the horse. But I fed the wrong end. So I must have been like 5 years old. 4 or 5 years old. Anyways, I was at that area when the horse decided he didn't want this little rat kid behind him anymore. And he kicked me right in the stomach. And my shoes both flew both ways. And I couldn't breathe. And finally, eventually I got my wind. And I remember, I think my sister's like, Guido, the horse kicked Jason. Everyone was just panicking. I could barely breathe. My Guido looked at me. Guido was a crap-fighting Ukrainian. Looked at me, said, it was just a love tap. And didn't even bother. So we had to be tough in our family. And I guess that's why I tell my kids when they get hurt, you're tough, you're analytic. And I was scared of horses ever since. And then I took one outdoor education class in New Jersey, went on an exchange student there, and we had horse riding, and I had to go on the horse. And I did, and luckily it was the slowest horse in the world. Whereas I think the guy from Texas, he got this horse, and he had a slow horse. His horse was in love with my horse. Little hearts in her eyes, and so her horse followed my horse around all the time, and he was not mad because he wanted to gallop. He's like, come on. Like, nope, it just followed my slow, lazy horse. And then the most unexpected thing happened. His hat fell off. So he got off his horse, couldn't reach his hat, let go of the reins, got his hat, and then what happened? This horse turned into the Kentucky Derby winner, world record for speed. This horse took off like lightning, and it was hilarious because he had no horse, and I was happy with my lazy slow horse. Anyways, don't forget to read stop sign guide because you can't do this question B, or you're at least guessing, if you don't read stop sign guide. So first lesson, read everything, not just, even though this looks less important, it's important to do B. Index. What's the index in A? 5 is the smallest number. That's called the index. It's the root. There is no little number here. What is it, 1? It's 2. But when we don't see it, it's always 1. It's not 1, it's 2. Why? Because this one we're asking ourselves what number times itself 5 times. That's the index. This one we're asking ourselves what number times itself 2 times equals 50. So that's why there's an imaginary 2 there. Okay, and this one, the index is the small number. Radicand, talk to me. 75 is the number under the radical. Anything under the radical sign is the radicand. So does that include the negative sign here? Anything under the radical sign, so negative 1/10. You don't have to use all the numbers. 5 is just the coefficient and the numerical coefficient. Forget the 5. 5 has got nothing to do with the index or the radicand. Yep.
If we haven't solved it yet, the negative just still goes through the whole thing. I thought it was only when we solved it.
That's a shortcut that can work, but doesn't always work. So the negative's under the radical sign. You got to keep it under the radical sign. And remember, good job for bringing this up. Remember, you can't take the square root of a negative, but you can take the cubic root of a negative. That's an awesome review from yesterday. Okay, you got 5 minutes to work on homework. Go ahead and do that. Okay, let's go to the bottom of page 9. Back to university. This one's going to be a little harder to do, but try them. Read this. Try the next 3 examples. Do your best. We'll go over them. Try to figure them out on your own. Okay, what this mumbo jumbo says is that you can multiply radicals together and you can divide radicals together. So write down radical times a radical equals a radical. What does that mean? That means radical 3 times radical 2 equals radical 6. Radical 3 times radical 2 does not equal the number 6. Radical times a radical equals a radical. Similarly, radical divided by a radical equals a radical as well. So radical 42 divided by radical 6 equals radical 7. You can do that with radicals. However, you can't add and subtract them. Radical 2 plus radical 3 does not equal radical 5. So let's see what happens at the top of the next page. Oh, look at my cowboy hat. It's so tough. True or false? Radical times radical equals radical. That's true. Radical divided by radical equals a radical. That's true as long as 20 divided by 10 equals 2. Now, next time you might see that, it might say equals the number 2. That would be wrong. A radical divided by radical has to equal another radical. And does this work? I like this. It doesn't work. I just told you it doesn't work for adding, but if you look at this, this equals radical 25, or square root of 25, which is 5, and that does not equal 4 plus 3. So you can see by this nice example they give us that addition clearly doesn't work with radicals. There's other rules. You guys are lucky. Your brothers and sisters 10 years ago, for the radical unit, they had to add, subtract, multiply, and divide radicals. That was in the curriculum about 10 years ago. Now we don't do that. This radical unit is much shorter for us. So we need to get this high mark because we're not doing anything except for really simplifying mixed radicals. That's the meat and potatoes, which is coming up next. This is just kind of introducing the mixed number, so radical times radical equals radical. So this one, is this right? No, that's wrong. What am I missing? A radical sign. Okay, so this is radical 21. This equals radical 50 divided by radical 10 equals radical 5. And how do we do this one? Well, what's the square root of 100? 10, good job. So you have to do it twice. So square root of 100 is 10. And what's radical 10 divided by radical 2? Radical 5. Anybody figure out what they're asking in example 7a? Exactly. So what did you put? Good job. Okay, just make sure you have your radical signs. I love this question. 711. So we'll get a Slurpee, Coke Slurpee. That's all they're asking to do. Anything that multiplies to 77, just break it up. I like Katie's description. That's the answer. You have to write the question. So anything for 27, And anything for 40, you can put 4 times 10, 20 times 2, or if you want, 8 times 5. 5 minutes to work on homework. Okay, let's go to the next heading. Bless you. Entire mixed radicals, page 11. This is the meat and potatoes of the radical unit. So if you know how to do this, you know how to add, subtract, multiply, dividing radicals, you'll be ready, souped up for grade 11. Begging to do radicals in the summertime, even though we have to wait until the fall. Again, there's mumbo jumbo here, but this is just saying you can multiply and divide radicals together. And this is introducing us of what's coming up. So let's go here at radical 24. We can break it up, like Katie said, into the question. Radical 4 times what? What 4 times what equals 24? 6. Let's break that up into the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. And why is that important? Because we're going to turn these entire radicals into mixed radicals. What did you say the square root of 4 was before you met me? The number 2. So you turn that into 2, and you keep the radical 6. So we just turned this entire radical into a mixed radical, and that's what we're going to be doing for the majority of the unit. That's the most important skill you can know. It's going to come up in adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing radicals. So we have to be a master of it. We haven't even started yet. This is just introducing it. 18 is radical 9 times 2, which can be broken up into radical 9 times radical 2. And then the square root of 9 equals the number 3. We're going to turn square roots into numbers. Okay, perfect squares. You can hear me say perfect squares many, many times the next week plus. Now, C is a rare question. In fact, start. Because if you don't get it, you probably won't even put anything. Because 11 doesn't divide by 4. I wonder if everyone can hear me. 11 doesn't divide by 4. So how do you get marks for C? Anyone think of anything to get a mark? You're way ahead of us. That'd be rationalizing. Good try. Anything else? No one last class saw anything. Just anything you can do. Good try. That's a shortcut. You're way ahead of us too. That's a shortcut for rational numbers. Going once. Yep.
I can go back to
Square root the 9.
Yep. That's all you can do. So this turns into 11 divided by 4. And the only thing you can do is turn the square root of 4 into what? Into 2. There's no dividing there. It looks like a division question. It isn't. It's just simplify the square root of 4 into 2. So when students do leave this blank, they kick themselves in the shins when they get it back. Like, that's all I had to do was turn square root of 4 into 2. That's all you have to do. That's all you can do. Okay, that's a rare question. It might happen once, but if it does, make sure you get it. And get that super high mark in radicals. Okay, turn the page. Let's go to some chocolate bar competition. Not yet, but soon. Here's some terminology. I'm going to be calling them entire radicals. I guess some teachers call them pure. I'm not going to call them pure. Entire radicals have only a radical part. Or I'm going to say, write this down please, everything is entirely under the radical. Yeah, that's what entire radical means. Everything's entirely under the radical sign. You can see the examples. All these radical, the number is entirely under their square root sign or the cubic root sign. Mixed radicals have a number part and a radical part. There's a number, 8 radical 7. Those are called mixed radicals. We're going to turn entire radicals into mixed radicals, and then later mixed radicals into other mixed radicals that are simpler. We want to deal with radical 2s, not radical 50s. We're going to deal with radical 3s, not radical 27s. Okay, we're going to simplify it, just like we did at the bottom of that last page. Okay, right now I just want you to write the blanks down, and I'll tell you what the contest is soon. Okay, I want you to write down 4 blanks after 4, after 9, after 16, after 25, and after 36, just write down 2 blanks. After 49, 2 blanks. After 64 and 81, 2 blanks. After 100, I want you to write down 4 blanks again. And then 2 blanks for 121, 2 blanks for 144, 1 blank for 13 squared and 14 squared, and then we'll go back to 2 blanks for 15 squared. And then I'm going to add 1 here. There's another perfect square. Can you guys underline this 5 million times? Perfect. These are called the perfect squares. 25, 16, 49. Those are called perfect squares. And then go ahead and write down 4 blanks after x squared. And we'll let everyone get there. And then we'll have our chocolate bar contest. It's going to be speed and accuracy. If it's right, it has to be completely right. Okay, whenever I see everyone stop writing the blanks, we'll start. Ready to start? Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to write down the multiples of 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. What's the next multiple of 9? 18. Okay, so fill in all the blanks. And don't forget the black ones, including the black ones. Fill in all the blanks, including the black ones. Whoever does that quickest and gets them all right wins the chocolate bar. Okay, let's go with the multiples. 16, 32, 48. Are those ones? Those ones are important. And 80 is it's probably the hardest one you'll ever see. 80, you need to know that it's 16 times 5. Who knows that? Well, you do now. Anytime you see 25s and 50s, 75s, you're thinking 25. 49, 98, 147, 128. Is that 192? Somebody? And if you see 200, 300, 400, then you know what to think. It's 100. It's not 25. You want to choose the biggest one. And 242, 363, 288. Oh no. What is that? 432? Thank you. 338. 196 is 392. And 450.
She messed up 120.
Thank you. 121? About 300. Nope. Doesn't matter. Just mark it right and don't say anything. Good. What did you put for x squared though? Okay, so everyone here is going to put x to the fourth. And that would be if it was multiplied together, but you're not multiplying 4 times 4 to get 8. You're adding 4 plus 4 equals 8. Plus 4, plus 4, plus 4. So what's x squared plus x squared, Katie? 1x squared plus 1x squared. So you don't need to know that. It was just a challenge I threw to you. Those are the charts. Don't worry, you don't need to memorize that 3 times 144 equals 432. You don't need to know that. It will come up. You just need to know that 144 is a perfect square. You need to know that 121 is 11 times 11. Okay, so we're going to use this perfect square chart. We're going to break up radicals into a perfect square times another number. So when we do the square root of 49, we turn it into 7. Square root of 81, we turn that into 9. Okay, and then part of the radical turns into a number. Okay, but you need a number on this list. Okay, so we do the square root of 49, 7, square root of 100 is 10, square root of 4 equals the number 2. That is what we're going to be doing. You also need to choose the biggest one. When you see 32, you need to know it's 16 times 2. You don't want to use 4 times 8. Sorry, where's the 4? We don't want to use 4 times 8 because it's not the biggest number. 4 isn't the biggest. 16 is the biggest perfect square. Okay, and we'll talk about all those different rules. So let's go to the bottom of the page. We're excited. Oh, I'm pumped. My blood is just boiling. Here's the steps. Find the biggest perfect square times another number that equals the radicand. Okay, so that's a lot of words. It's just, in fact, I'm not going to say biggest one. Right now I'm just going to say perfect square times what number. Perfect square, when I say that over and over again, I mean it's a number on the list that we just did. Okay, 2 squared, 3 squared, 49, 25, those are perfect squares. 81. Write down number on the list. That's what we're going to be doing. The most important part of grade 10 is converting entire radicals or mixed radicals into mixed radicals. And you're going to choose a number on this list times another number that equals, so the biggest perfect square times the number equals the radicand, or the number under the radical sign. So when we get to this page, we're not going to just start with 50. We're going to write down the perfect square chart right here. I'm not going to give it to you. I'd advise you write it down as soon as I give you a quiz or a test. Write down 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4. Okay, these are all the perfect squares. We need these numbers times another number that equals our radicand. Okay, so 50, radical 50, I don't care about, sir, did you have to go as well? Okay, so let's just wait for a second. Go ahead. Hey, just wait. Let's do a couple of these questions so you don't miss the most important part. 50, 5 times 10, doesn't matter. 5 times 10 is not on this list. Okay, that's probably what we all think when we think of 50. You need a number on this list that turns into a number. What would it be? What number on that list equals something times another number that equals 50? 25. That's the only choice we have. So 25 times radical 2. Now, write down this important note. Put the perfect square first. Every time. That's the one that turns into a number. Okay, before you met me, what was the square root of 25? What number times itself? 2 times equals 25? 5. Sometimes I see the answer as 2 radical 5 from students, which is close, but I don't really know if I can give you half your marks. And of course, if they do it once, they do it 10 times. So don't mix these up. It's the perfect square, the number on the list that turns into 4 and 6, and in this case, turns into 5. Okay, so let's go 45. Give me one more minute, bud. 45, number on the list is 9. So radical equals radical times a radical. And now, anything on this list, you can square root it and turn it into a number. What's the square root of 9, everyone? 3. So 3 radical 5. Now what about the big numbers that we saw in black, those big numbers that were scary and Halloweeny like? We don't care about them. We just have to recognize these numbers here. We just have to recognize the numbers on the list. So when you get a big number like 320, here's our hint. I'm going to write it here because that's about the only space we have for it. The hint for big numbers, write this down please, is to divide by 2, divide by 3, divide by 4, divide by 5. Usually if you divide by 2 or 3, a perfect square pops up. So let's do radical 320 equals, let's divide that by 2. What's 320 divided by 2? 160. Well, that's not quite on the list. 169 is actually 13 times 13. Okay, divided by 3. Doesn't work. Divided by 4. 80 is close, and that's not good enough. What happens when you divide it by 5? 64 is the one that pops out. If you keep dividing, usually dividing by 2 or 3 is good enough. But in this case, we have to divide by 5. In a rare case, you might have to divide by 7 to get something. What's the square root of 64? 8 radical 5 is your final answer. You have simplified it, this entire radical, into a mixed radical. Go ahead and do the next 3, please. Need a number on the list, the green numbers, times another number that equals 8. The biggest number on the list times another number that equals 200. And then for C, it's a big number, use the hint, divide by 2 or 3, and usually a perfect square will pop up. Okay, radical 8 is the easiest one I can give you. There's only 2 numbers to multiply to 8 if you don't use 1. Let's make sure the perfect square goes first. And what's the square root for, everybody? 2. So this is what your answers look like now. 2 radical 2, 5 radical 6, negative 8 radical 3. Get used to those kind of answers. Mixed numbers, or sorry, mixed radicals. 200. This is why we did the chart. I'm hoping you steer away from the smallest one and give me the biggest one. What's the biggest perfect square? Somebody? 100 is the biggest. 100 times 2. What's the square root of 100 equal? 10. So 10 radical 2 is your final answer. If you chose 25, let's go down here in red. If you chose 25 for the 200, that's 25 times 8, which is 5 radical 8. If you punch that in your calculator, that'll be exactly the same as 10 radical 2, but this isn't simplified, because now you can simplify radical 8 into radical 4 times radical 2, and usually no one does that. Okay, so choose the biggest one. I don't care if you do it now, but next time you see 200, 300, 400, 500, not 400 because it's 20 times 20, make sure you put 100, not 25. And lastly, you got the 128, the hint. What happens when you divide by 2? Does that work? What's 128 divided by 2? 64, we know that's a perfect square. What's the square root of 64, everybody? 8. Make sure you put 8 radical 2, not 2 radical 8. Okay, fun stuff. Right now, you got the homework, a little bit of homework, and I also want you to do these 3 questions. So do these 3 questions right now. You might have time before you leave to do them, and we'll crack those 3 tomorrow. And any questions on simplifying radicals? Always put the perfect square, the number on the list, first, because you can always square root those and turn them into numbers. Okay, perfect squares always turn into numbers when they're under a radical sign. God bless, awesome day!